Welcome to the Black Sparrow Media Internet Broadcast Network.
You are listening to Linux in the Ham Shack. LHS is a podcast about Linux, open source, and amateur radio for everyone. Now here are your hosts, Russ, K5TUX, Cheryl, W5MOO, and Bill, NE4RD.
Well, hello everybody and welcome. You have tuned in to episode number 508 of Linux in the Ham Shack, the most terrific amateur radio podcast on the internet. And tonight is our short topics episode. We had a little break after the deep dive on Not 1MM, so we hope you listened to that. And I was out of town for a little over a week, so no recording last week. But we're back. Well, at least most of us are back. And we're going to go ahead and dive into some short topics on Linux, open source, amateur radio, and perhaps some other things. But before we do that, we'll introduce ourselves. For the on assignment this week, Cheryl, W5MOO. I'm Russ, K5TUX.
And I'm Bill, NE4RD.
All right. So without further ado, as they often say, we should probably just dive right into it. We don't have a lead topic. Even though field day just ended, I made a whopping 30 contacts. Ooh.
That's more than I did.
I didn't even bother breaking out the generator so I could operate as an echo station. I just did the stupid 1 Delta, but you know what? At least I participated. I got my participation trophy. So
nothing wrong with that.
And we'll talk a little bit more about field day later on in the show, but let's go ahead and get into some amateur radio topics. And because I'm feeling saucy, I'll just let Bill do the first one.
There you go. Yeah, this is the ARDC is now on Groups.io. For a while now, ARDC grantees have asked us about opportunities to connect with, learn from, and support one another. Last month, we set up ardc.groups.io, a forum designed to do just that. The main group is for announcements about the ARDC. The community group is for topics of general interest. These may include discussions about ongoing projects, how best to apply for a grant, and discussions about the future of amateur radio. To join the discussion, follow one of the links above or in the show notes. And then click the Join This Group button. There, enter your email address and you're in. Come one, come all. We're excited to hear from you and to foster supportive discussions with and for our community at groups.io. And this came right from the ARDC's website.
Okay, so who are you and where is Bill? Because that was like a perfect read.
Sorry, so sorry.
Well, that's okay. I'm sure I'll screw up the next one. But yeah, that was kind of cool to see. I have not actually signed up for it yet, though, so I must do that.
Yeah, I was an early adopter, obviously.
You weren't really a doctor?
Early adopter.
Oh, an early adopter. Gotcha. Yeah. So you weren't either one. Yeah. All right. Well, very good. Thanks to ARDC. And they there was another story I saw about them getting like 57 grant applications for the current period, and the next ones end July 1st, which is really soon. So if you want to get an ARDC grant proposal submitted, you best do it now. And then the next one is October 1st. So if you need some money, fill out some paperwork. So what do we have next? Legislation to remove private land use restrictions on amateur radio introduced in Congress. A new bill to this has actually happened before, but this is a new one. So a new bill to remove private land use restrictions that prohibit, restrict, or impair the ability of hams from operating and installing reasonable antennas on property they own or control has been introduced in Congress. Quote, I reintroduced the Amateur Radio Emergency Preparedness Act. Does that have a cool ARIPA? ARIPA, I guess, would be the acronym. To remove barriers to disaster and emergency communications and training, and to promote education in STEM subjects related to critically needed wireless technology. Congressman Bill, see, I screwed up. Haha. Congressman Bill Johnson of Ohio said in a release, the exponential growth of communities bound by private land use restrictions that prohibit both the operation of amateur radio and the installation of amateur radio station antennas has significantly restricted the growth of the amateur radio service. The ARRL continues its multi-year efforts to eliminate private land use restrictions, has pledged to strongly support Congressman Johnson and others on behalf of amateur radio. I think that sentence is screwed up. Rick Roderick, K5UR, president of the ARRL, on behalf of its members in America's amateur radio community, extended his thanks and appreciation for their tireless efforts to support and protect the rights of all amateur radio operators and to further STEM education and the advancement of American expertise in wireless technology. So there you go. I did not read the bill, but it's a reintroduction. There was one introduced like in 2017 and then another one, I think, in 2022 or something like that.
Yeah.
This is like the current one. So
yeah, I haven't read this one either, but this one is getting some decent traction. So I would definitely, if you're interested in following that, do so on the Congress's website, because you can just go right in and track that bill itself. And hopefully I think the last time they spent quite a bit of money on pushing it through, and then it just the timing or something like that just kind of the bill just kind of stalled.
Yeah, well, hopefully it picks up on that traction this time around and actually does something, because the proliferation of HOAs and land restrictions is getting to the point where lots of people who really should be able to put up an antenna that isn't some egregious, 300-foot tall structure are really having trouble. So
yeah, reasonable accommodation, I think, would be great.
Absolutely. And that story came from the ARRL themselves. So from the legislative body of amateur radio in America, let's move over to England so Bill can talk about Ofcom.
I'll fix that very first word that is wrong. But yeah, Ofcom proposing several changes for UK licensing framework. Ofcom, communications regulatory body for the United Kingdom, is requesting feedback to potential changes to the amateur radio licensing framework. According to the proposal, amateur radio has been an important part of wireless communication technology in the UK for more than a century. In the UK, Ofcom is responsible for managing the radio spectrum and ensuring that it is used in the best interest of everyone in the country, including users of amateur radio. There are more than 101,000 amateur radio licenses in the UK currently. A few of the changes outlined in the proposal include only permit licensees to hold a single individual license, requiring surrender of lower licenses as they progress. I'm assuming this means people can have multiple licenses. That's interesting. Streamline and
if you have a higher license, why would you want to have the lower one?
I'm not sure how that actually makes sense, but I guess I don't understand enough about their licensing. Streamline and modernize call sign assignment. Increase the maximum permitted transmit power to allow 20 watts for foundation and 100 watts for intermediate licenses in most bands, and 1,000 watts for full licenses in bands where amateur radio has a primary allocation. Permit the deployment of repeaters, beacons, and gateways without requiring a NOV in most cases. NOV, interesting. Allow foundation licenses to build their own equipment and access the 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz bands, and enable low-power airborne use in some frequency bands. A link to a PDF document of the full proposal will be included in the show notes. And there they are, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I don't know much about this, but I know the ICQ amateur podcast, whatever. I think they just had an interview at Friedrichshafen about this with the Ofcom folks. So, or no, the RSGB. I think that's it. Yeah, the Radio Society of Great Britain. I just watched the very beginning of that, and I didn't even know this was going to be a story tonight. So now I don't have all the information because I didn't finish watching or listening to that podcast.
I didn't even start, so you got further than me. But
yeah,
I have been listening to more podcasts lately, though. I haven't had a lot of windshield time lately. I had, over the past few weeks, been behind the wheel for a while, so podcast listening came to the forefront again, but now I haven't been driving. And I didn't want to drive the 3,000-mile round trip to New Hampshire and back listening to amateur radio podcasts because Cheryl probably would have punched me. But so it is what it is. But anyway, that'll be interesting to see how that. I'm sure we'll be reporting more on what changes in the UK as things happen in those proposals get some attention. So switching over to some open source topics, let's hit the first one here. Intel's new open source mono font is pretty decent. Is that your quote, or is that like what it actually said?
Yeah, that's exactly what the title of the article was.
Okay, still, there's always room for more, right? Intel thinks so, hence the release of Intel 1 Mono. This is an, quote, expressive monospaced font family that's built with clarity, legibility, and the need of developers in mind, end quote. Better yet, it's not only free to download and use, but free to edit and free to redistribute. Typography experts at Frere Jones Type worked alongside Intel's brand team and marketing company, VMLY&R marketing to finesse the form, fit, and function of the Intel 1 Mono font. Intel 1 Mono supports over 200 languages using Latin script and is provided in 4 weights: light, regular, medium, and bold, with matching italics. You can download Intel 1 Mono from GitHub. It comes as a zip file you need to unpack, and inside is the font you can install using your desktop's default font viewer, assuming it has one. You can also manually install fonts by dropping them into the tilde, other words, your home directory, .local/share/fonts folder, the TrueType font.ttf, as well as the WOFF. So what's W in that?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure I've seen those. WOFF and WOFF2 web fonts. Okay, it says right there, web.
There you go.
Are, quote, manually optimized for screen display, end quote, Intel says, and recommends using this version rather than the OpenType font format, OTF version. So that story came from OMG Ubuntu. So interesting. I have to check that font out. There are some really good fonts out there. There really are.
Yes. Sometimes, though, you end up with way too many fonts installed on your computer. Then.
Every time I do something in like GIMP and I want to have, some font, I just go to 1001 fonts or all those sites or whatever. And so my fonts my computer's probably using like 4 gigs of memory just for fonts, but I
wonder why my GIMP takes so long to load, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I've been meaning to check this font out since I've dropped this story in there, and I just now installed it, so I won't have any feedback on it until next time.
But we'll definitely have feedback, so I'm going to check it out too. I'm curious to see how it is. All right, so let's hit the next one. Bill, what do we got?
Sure, yeah, this is a KDE. Plasma 6 has reached the point of being fairly livable, in quotes. Another interesting topic, title. A prominent KDE developer, Nate Graham, has published an update on the current state of affairs for KDE Plasma 6, along with when we may potentially see Plasma 6 actually released. Nate Graham believes that Plasma 6 is now, quote, fairly livable, end quote, and recommends KDE developers and power users / enthusiasts start giving it out a try, or just giving it a try from the current Git master development state. Yeah, he characterized Plasma 6 as, quote, basically everything in Plasma compiles with Qt6 or Qt 6, and at this point, Plasma 6 is fairly livable. To give you a sense of how livable, it's good enough that over the past 2 months, I've gone on 3 KDE-related trips from the US to Europe with my only computer running Plasma 6 in the current Git master state, with work in progress, merge request applied. Its stability has been good enough that this has caused me no apprehension, and indeed it has been totally fine on each trip. So seriously, if you are a KDE developer or an adventurous user, start living on Plasma 6. Jump right in. The water is fine. Smiley face. End quote. He went on to write more about the current development activities around Plasma 6. He also shared his personal beliefs around Plasma 6 release timing, although no official release schedule is yet to be determined. Nate's belief is that Plasma 6 will likely be ready for release sometime between December and March. So maybe a Christmas present, maybe an April Fool's Day present. Haha. And that came to us from Phoronix.
Okay, so my takeaway from the last 2 stories is that if you're developing an open source and your code is pretty good or fairly livable, then ship it.
Ship it. Aren't you supposed to fail fast, right, when you're doing startups and open source and stuff like that? Fail fast, so you can just get to the next thing. And MVP, swing the MVP bat, minimal viable product all over yourself.
Absolutely. Good enough is good enough.
Yeah.
All right. So that brings us, we only had 2 open source topics for tonight. Must have been a light news week. Everyone was preparing for field day. So no one's.
Yeah.
Oh, if you did a Google news search for amateur radio, by the way, the first 3,000 hits were about field day. So,
well, they should be, because you get extra points if you do a PR thing. So I was watching my Facebook feed on the Tampa Amateur Radio Club, which I used to be a member of, and they were pretty involved with getting the press out there and doing little stories. So I'm glad to see a lot of clubs are kind of pushing that further and getting involved in generating extra media.
Yeah, very good. So that means we're down to Linux in the Ham Shack. And I just threw this in here because there were no topics when I got down to this section earlier today. So I figured I better throw something in. And it was basically just about my experience using Not 1mm for field day today. I only operated today. I didn't operate yesterday. And there was a question in my mind about whether I should use Mike K6 GTE's field day logger or Not 1mm. Certainly could have used either one. I mean, one is obviously purpose-built for field day logging, and the other one is the new clone, quote unquote, of Not 1 or of N1mm.
Yeah.
And it obviously has the ability to log for field day. So being that it was the newer offering and it's still in active development, I figured I'd give it a shot. And I really had no issues with it. I mean, I wish I could just sit here and expound upon all of the problems I had and all the things that need to be fixed and all that kind of thing. But honestly, I did the initial configuration, set up my station for the way I was going to operate, which was a 1 Delta station, because I'm extremely lazy. And after doing that, it just worked. It, was basically tab through the fields, enter the call, the station type and the section, and away it went. It dupe checked as I went. I used the band map so I could see all the stuff from the DX trackers and stuff, our reverse beacon network and all that. So I could see all those CW stations out there. I wasn't going to work because I was only operating sideband and FT8.
And didn't Mike tell you not to use the Not 1mm too? Didn't he say you're supposed to?
Well, yeah, but I was already using it at that point, so
too late, right?
Didn't really back out. What do you mean there's no field day plugin?
Yes, says there's field day in it.
It says there's field day plugin in there. The hell are you talking about, Mike? It's your software. And I absolutely found ARRL field day in there, and it worked a charm. So, and even produced a Cabrillo log. So. Or Cabrillo, I guess, as the gringos like to say. But yeah, it totaled up my points and everything. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but it was there. It did the job, and I had no problems. So
yeah. the only thing I ran into, because I loaded it up too, but then I realized that something is wrong with my antenna, so I decided to not do anything. It's missing one shortcut, and the Control W needs to wipe the current log or current contact entry. That's the only thing I noticed. That's definitely an improvement, needs to be added. Escape does that. Oh, I don't use Escape. I use Control W. So there you go.
So you can just remap Escape to Control W and you'll be all set.
I need a mapper.
The log was nice because it sort of operated. You could have the log window open, and it kind of operated like a Microsoft Access database thing where you could just go in and change the fields ad hoc if you needed to, which I did a couple of times because I misheard call signs and stuff like that. But, overall, it worked perfectly. Had no issues with it. And so since Mike says there's no plugin for it, but there actually is, I guess I'll just continue to use it. He's probably going to rip it out and say, no, there isn't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe there is. Maybe we'll see.
Yeah. There clearly was. So, yeah. But anyway, field day logger. Yeah. Should have worked just as well, I'm sure. But I did what I did, and I'm sticking to it. So
yeah. I mean, you can always paper log it too, right? Still allow you to do that with field days. So.
Yeah. Who does that?
Yeah. Well, 30 contacts. That's all you needed to do. It's barely a page, right?
Well, that's true. But anyway, so yeah, not one apparently, despite the author's reservations, actually supports Field Day. So
in beta,
right. So anyway,
your mileage may vary, right?
Yeah, exactly. My mileage went quite well, actually. Did well. So you threw in this story about K-Log. So what's going on with K-Log?
Yeah, I just happened to be looking at my email right before the show, and I see that K-Log has, because that's all we talk about now is just loggers. K-Log has just released their latest version. Can't even talk now. I was reading good, and then now it's all over. It's back to normal bad read, and I'm actually installing it right now. K-Log version 2.3.1 listed as having many bug fixes, Ukrainian, and new settings. So apparently you got a Ukrainian with your logger. I'm assuming that's exactly what that means, or maybe it's just they've added the language support. But anyway, look at that K-Log just installed right away here on Arch. The latest version too. Anyway, so what did they fix? Oh gosh, lots of bug fixes here. The ones that I can think that most people would be interested in if you use K-Log are things like they fixed club log. Apparently they changed some URLs. So that's been fixed. They've fixed some confirmation logic with LOTW on DXCC status stations. They fixed some conditions on the QRZ.com logger and the EQSL.cc log upload. Apparently those were not working. Scrolling. Some improvements. They got some SQL queries optimized for speed. So for those of you that have lots of log entries in there, I'm assuming that's something you would run into. They've added some UI enhancements, a couple of buttons, and some right-click options and stuff like that for doing DX clusters, send a spot to QRZ.com, and they have a lookup button and everything else. So it looks like K-Log is coming along. I haven't actually used this in a long time, so I don't really have much. I don't have much to say about K-Log, so I'm installing it now just to take a look at it. But I have heard about it, and maybe we'll have to kind of do a deep dive if we run out of interesting loggers to talk about. No, just kidding. We'll just keep on our whole log train here, and we'll talk about loggers for the next 6 months, and we'll do a logger a month now. But anyway, so looks like, there's a K-Log stopped the war in Ukraine. Oh, so that's some kind of political statement here. That's what they put in the application. There you go. Okay, so if you want that, you can go ahead and look at that on your own. Have fun. K-Log, new version 2.3.1.
All right, very good. And that information came directly from the K-Log GitHub. So if you want to read
it was on the Linux Ham mailing list. That's how I got the email. So
all right, very good. I heard on This Week in Amateur Radio on episode 1266, they mentioned that, how the Southgate ARC thing went away with the unfortunate passing of the guy who maintained it. There's a new one. And let me see if I can find the thing for it. It's, man.
Really prepared, right?
Yeah.
As prepared as I was for the K-Log story.
daily.hamweekly.com.
Oh, geez.
daily.hamweekly.com. That hopefully will grow into a suitable replacement for the Southgate ARC news thing aggregation. I will, of course, put a link to that in the show notes so people can go there and use that. But it's not the full-fledged thing that Southgate was. It's in its infancy, but it is now currently maintained. There is stories there. There are stories there, and you can submit stories there as well. And they, of course, would love submissions so they can be the clearinghouse for amateur radio information that Southgate used to be. So there you go. Daily, what did I say? I already forgot.
I was just subscribing to the feeds.
daily.hamweekly.com. daily.hamweekly.com. Yep. Okay, there you go.
I just have to figure out how to add a feed. I haven't added a feed in a long time.
Well, while Bill's doing that, he's also going to have to address maybe this YouTube comment. And remember, for the last couple of episodes, I said that there was some feedback and I couldn't find it. I think this was it.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, this is a YouTube comment from Zach Helmberger. And he says, and this is on your video about installing Qtel on Ubuntu.
Okay.
He says, Qtel version 1.2.2 is the latest I have. It has problems on both Debian and Xubuntu. It won't connect through several routers unless I use a proxy, and incoming sound often does not work on EchoTest, Newsline, and TX works after TXing twice. Buggy for me. So anything you want to expound upon there?
What version did he say he was running?
1.2.2.
A 1.2.2. That's interesting because, they're in version 19.09 is.
But didn't they do the thing where they started incrementing the primary number like Ubuntu did?
Yeah. I mean, this is probably still old. I don't know. I don't have it installed here on my system, but I know exactly what you're talking about, and I've had problems with that version over the years too. But I do believe there's been some updates to it.
I haven't used Qtel or SVX Link in some time, so I can't really address this. I know when I was using it, it worked fine for what little bit of Echo Link on Linux I did, but I couldn't even begin to tell you what version I was using back at that time, and I don't know what the release date of 1.2.2 is at this point, so I would say try and find a newer version and see if that takes care of the issues that I know I had lots of issues with, like QSS TV, that were fixed by an update. So maybe an update to SVX Link / Qtel will fix your issues as well.
I'm not sure if that's going to fix your problem. I generally use Echo Link from my cell phone, so I don't really use a Linux solution beyond an Android solution for that. But I'll take a look at the new version and see if that has a better workability and whatnot, and hopefully having it install SVX Link doesn't give me dummy audio devices on my system again. Ugh, great.
Well, thanks, Zach. You managed to bork Bill's computer during the show, so
yeah,
not your fault at all. Just Bill trying to troubleshoot while actually recording. Never a good idea.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. I have to use a separate computer to do that.
Yeah, we appreciate the feedback though, and hopefully, if we figure something out, we will definitely respond to your comment on YouTube with some more specifics about trying to fix that. In the meantime, I didn't have any announcements, except for the fact that our recording schedule is going to be kind of suspect again, with you being out of town headed to Virginia. But that's not for, a couple of weeks yet, so...
Yeah. So we'll be playing it by ear. I mean, I should be able to record because it's not like I'll be doing much at 9 o'clock at night or whatever the time would be on East Coast time. So as long as I have connectivity, I should be able to record. I'm not bringing all my microphone gear and everything else with me. But I will have a microphone for sure, and I will be able to communicate. So I don't foresee any huge issues making it. So yeah, I mean, it should be fine. But if something does come up, then I'll tell you. Probably that last weekend would be the one that when I'm driving home, that might be a stretch.
Okay, now fair enough. But I mean, we'll let everybody know via the various means, if things are going to be a little askew, if we change days or if we skip one or something like that. But for the most part, we should be good to go. But, things can change. So, all right. And with that, we've actually come down to the end of the show. But we do have new subscribers, supporters, and live participants to run through. So let's go ahead and hit those real quick. For subscribers and Patreons, we had Boguslav Chernikowski on Facebook. We have Matt Long, Twitter at Alert Mitchell, on Instagram, W5SWX, on Mastodon, Jeff Luchich, probably somewhere in the ballpark anyway. Electric Weave, R2AZE, and N8VW. So thanks everybody there. On YouTube, we had Rick, just Rick, that Rick. So on the mailing list, we had Holly Grimmett and KO4VNX, Kilo Oscar 4 Victor November X-Ray. And on Discord, Peter, Mike 7 Hotel Whiskey Foxtrot, Pretty Okay, which is appropriate for this episode because apparently all open source is just pretty okay. And JRR1, thanks for joining us on Discord. And we also had some folks in the live chat tonight. We had Bill N3AJ, Ted WA0EIR, Mike K6GTE, Winston KT2KD2, Kilo Delta 2, Whiskey Lima Lima, and John K1BTZ. So thanks everybody for listening. We really appreciate it. Thanks for being here for the live show. Always fun to see
Stacy too. Did you get Stacy? You also got Stacy in there.
Oh,
KB7YS. Yeah.
Yeah, Stacy, KB7YS. I'm going to put that in here because this all gets cut and pasted onto the website, KB7YS. Snuck in there at the end. So, all right. So that does bring us down to the end of the show. We thank everybody for listening. We hope you enjoyed, and we hope you'll tune in for the Weekender, which comes up next. And, of course, we also hope you have a great week in between, and we will catch you for the next one. So for the On Assignment Cheryl, W5MOO, I'm Russ, K5TUX.
And I'm Bill, NE4RD 73.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Linux in the Ham Shack. LHS is a community-sponsored podcast. Our website is located at lhspodcast.info. You can support the podcast by visiting the LHS Patreon page at patreon.com/LHS Podcast or by using the contribute list on the homepage. We have a presence on Discord, Facebook, IRC, Twitter and YouTube. You can also drop us an email at info@lhspodcast.info or leave us a voicemail at 1-909-LHS-SHOW. That's 1-909-547-7469. Visit the online LHS merchandise store at shop.lhspodcast.info for fun and fashionable show-themed merchandise. Until next time, remember to always heed your hedonism.